Hello, it's me back with another video about things that I've been learning about and coding in relation to sound synthesis. And this time I thought we'd take a look at something called phase distortion synthesis, which was used in a series of synthesizers made by Casio in the 1980s, the Casio CZ series. So the CZ1 among others, different numbers. So yes, it's a form of synthesis that hasn't been used in many other places. So it's a bit rarer. So I thought it was interesting to take a look at. What we have here is well, first of all, I should say that so this kind of tutorial-ish thing will basically only be looking at the oscillator section, so of the synthesizer, and not even all of that, to be honest, because there's some other things that the Casio CZ uses besides just pure phase distortion, yeah, obviously that's not the total like sum of a synthesizer. Like pitch and timbre are just two elements, and another really big element is amplitude. So you would have to look at the envelopes and like the complete kind of sound design in the rounds to get a true picture of what the synth sounds like. We're just going to be looking at the straight up signal out of the oscillator, which yeah, won't give you a full, a full lush, nice sounding sound. It's just the kind of raw sound out of the sound generation kind of part of it, the sound generator. What we have here is a cosine wave, this purple one. I've inverted it, so it begins at -1 instead of 1, and I've increased the frequency just for convenience, so that it undergoes a full, complete wave cycle in the space between 0 and 1, rather than 0 and 2 pi. So yeah, mathematically this is minus cos 2 pi x at the moment. But we're going to mess it up and distort it some. So what we have in this orange line is what's called the phase transfer function. So what these 2 points here are saying is that when 0.5 time units have elapsed, we will be 0.5 of the way through the wave. So if we look up 0.5 on the x-axis, then we've got 1 on the y-axis, which is what you would expect to be if you're halfway through doing this cosine or negative cosine function wave. And obviously, yeah, at 1, then we expect to have completed the wave. But now let's mess around with it. So if I move this like this, and move it down to 0.04, yeah. So now what we have is in 0.04 time units, we've already done half of the wave, and then this after that the same kind of the other point's the same. So we've got all of this time left, and we've only got half of the wave left to do. So what happens is the first half ends up getting squished in time, and the second half gets stretched out. So squished in time is the same as saying it increases in frequency. Stretched is it's a lower frequency. So we're going fast, and then we're going slow. And that will be important towards the end of the video. You may be thinking, ooh, sounds a bit like FM, frequency modulation synthesis. Well, there's a connection, kind of, yes, kind of, no. So, yeah, stay tuned. So, having done this distortion, what we have now is something that looks a little bit like a sawtooth wave. Not very much like a sawtooth wave, because it's still obviously curved. It's not a straight line, but audibly it sounds very much like a sawtooth wave. So yeah, that's pretty cool. What we've done is like bent a cosine into a sawtooth. Just like what? It's kind of a bit mind bending to once you first start like exploring this topic. But it's pretty cool. So I think it's time for an audio demonstration, and so here's a heads up. I recommend like turning the sound down until you can like just about clearly hear what I'm saying, because like I wouldn't want you to like hurt your ears or damage your speakers. And yep, also like a heads up warning that like it's going to be like, well, not too high pitched because I turned the pitch down, but like it's going to be like annoying loud noises. I will try to keep them as short as possible. Yeah. But that's just a little heads up. So we're going to go into the code here. And the bit I need to change for different examples is this bit. I just need to copy and paste from over here. So the one that we're doing at the moment is the half fast. So completing half the wave in 0.04 of the time. So it's going to be a middle C. And yeah, I shall keep the examples as short as possible. So I'm going to run it and then I'm going to hit like refresh up here to stop it. So if you find like these kind of sounds annoying, because some people do if they have like misophonia or autism or something, then that's cool. I mean, it'll be a little bit sad face, but I'll understand. So you can mute the sound, and then when you see me press refresh, then the sound will be off. But I think it should be a better video with a little bit of sound rather than just graphs. Like I say, in order to really explore like the potential of this and like make some nicer sounding sounds, then you'll need some like envelopes and stuff, which we'll briefly touch on, but not really in this video. So here goes. I'm pressing enter. Yeah, so it sounds pretty sawtoothy. So that's our first. I don't know what I'm calling these. Not algorithms, because that's too confusing with like FM. But that's our first. I think I called them patterns at one point when I was writing comments in code. This is our first phase distortion pattern, which is called half fast. So I've already explained that bit. First half of the waveform runs fast, high frequency. Second half runs slow. Okay, so let's explore some more. I'm going to refresh this page. This tool, by the way, is called GeoGebra, which is, there's various similar ones, like Desmos as well. But it's basically just a free online math tool for graphing stuff. Oh, I know what I didn't. Yeah, I was going to demonstrate one more thing before we move on. So let's put this back to 0.04. or it doesn't really matter, but that's not a particularly magic number. So when we have no distortion, this orange line is just a straight line rather than a kind of kinky line. So we could imagine that this phase transfer function could change over time, so it doesn't have to be a fixed wave shape, and that will give an effect that, at least in some cases, depending on exactly what kind of phase transfer function you've got, it'll be kind of like opening and closing a filter, but there'll be no filters involved in this audio circuit. It's purely this phase distortion stuff of speeding up and slowing down. So in order to have no distortion, this line needs to be straight. It needs to be basically the line y equals x. So at 0 time, not any way through the wave. When we're halfway through it, when half of the time has elapsed, we should be halfway through. When all of the time, normally allocated to one wave cycle, when we're not messing around with it, then we should have completed all of it. If it's not to be distorted. So at the moment, this point is not in the quotes right place. I mean, it's causing some distortion, which is what we wanted. So what we could do, so in order for this point to be undistorted, the two numbers need to be the same, right? So 0.04 and 0.5 is distorted, but 0.04 would not be distorted. But also 0.5 would also not be distorted. So we could those correspond to either we move this point down so that it's positioned 0.4 units high on the y-axis, or we move it across over here somewhere, or not somewhere, specifically to 0.5, and then it will also be in the right place to not cause any distortion. So we've got two options. The Casio CZ, I believe, moves it across. In my implementation, because of the programming framework I'm working with and kind of what is easy or even possible to do, so I'm going to move it vertically. So it kind of morphs smoothly back into a cosine shape when I move this slider here. So let's have a look at what that sounds like. Right, uncomment this bit of code here. Whoops. Oh, drop. No. Oh, sorry. Whoa. What we want to do is delete that line, delete that line. Right. Okay, so noise coming up again, though it will fade out really quickly this time. It's just going to be for like a couple of seconds. There you go. Sawtooth fading into cosine. So that's how we can. Whoops. This is not the right one. This is the one we're coming to later. Okay, so let's try out some different shapes now. I think we're pretty much done with the half-fast one. That's self-explanatory. I mean, you don't have to have it as extreme as 0.04. You can have it something like that, or you can have it even more extreme, 0.01. But yeah, well, that's basically do it. Yeah, moving this back and forth. What if I stop myself from going past 0.5, which is quite hard to get it to stop bang on. But yeah, that's doing the equivalent of what I think the Casio does with its what they call DCW envelope, digitally controlled wave. So this kind of mysterious phase distortion digital equivalent that's supposedly like opening and closing a filter. Well, it does sound like but it's not that. So yeah, that's moving the X position across until it comes into straight line. And if you move it beyond 0.5, then it starts bending the other way. Whereas before we had the vertical one. But yeah, just different kinds of transformations. Right, let's refresh. So now I'm going to create a different shape. So I want this at 0.1. So far, so. And then I want this at 0.5. It's a bit fiddly to get things set exactly in the right place. Whoa! See, you can get some crazy things. This at 0.5 as well. And then on 0.6. Yeah, and then 1. So now we've bent our cosine wave into very nearly a square wave. It's slightly rounded off at the corners. And you can change that amount to taste. But yeah. So it's kind of like a slightly filtered square wave. Not sure how much they round it in the Casio implementation. Well, again, it probably depends on your DCW level. So it has a knob that you can manually turn it up and down, or you can apply an envelope like we did just before. So yeah, let's have a look what this. Not look. Let's have a hear what this sounds like. So I'm just going to copy and paste the code. So this one is called. I mean, it's just a group of points, but I've got these little functions that compute the points in a kind of simple formulaic method. So this one is called hold at middle and end, which, yeah, so hold at middle when it's halfway through. Then we just stay put, and then we do the other half, and then we stay put, and then we obviously reach the end of the cycle and start a new cycle. So, loud / uncomfortable noise coming up. So that is our square wave. Quite a basic square wave. Let's just play it again at a high frequency, just to get more of a feel for its squareness. Okay, loud noise briefly again. Yeah, that's sounding very square. Little bit of aliasing, but yeah. So, what other shapes can we make? So this time, let's. Sorry, just a second. Wiping some crap off my screen. So this time I want to. So at 0.28 time units. Oh no, hang on. yeah, no, sorry, 0.36 time units. I want to have done nothing. So this time we're going to pause at the beginning. And then at 0.64 time units, I mean, yeah, you can customize all these numbers to generate different variations on the shape. They're not particularly magic numbers. They just looked nice and obvious in the graph. No, I didn't mean to change that. This one was supposed to be left at 1. Okay, so now we have this pulse shape. So we do nothing, then we do the whole wave really quickly, and then we do nothing. Okay. Shall we have a look what that sounds like? Let's go back to the middle C, because we don't want any surprises of super high frequencies. High harmonics. So this one is called Finish Early, because that's what it does. It finishes the whole wave super quickly. Okay, loud noise. So it's got kind of a reedy tone. Okay, so let's do at least 3 more. I might chuck in a bonus one. Hopefully it's still interesting. You can have a sense of wonder. What weird shapes is she going to create next? Just by bending a cosine. So this time I want 0.13. Here's the magic number. 0.13. And this time we're going to run the oscillator backwards. So we're actually going to go negative 0.5. And then 0.26. Come on. No, don't whiz past it. Oh, I have to use the arrogance to just 0.26. We want to be at 0 again. And then 1, 1, 1. So now we've got this yeah. I think Casio call it sine pulse, but it actually begins with the pulse. So pulse sine. We've got like a whole wave that's done fast, and then a whole wave that's done slow. Well, I say whole wave, it's actually back a half and then forward a half, but because it's a cosine wave, in techie math terms, it's an even function. So if you go back a half and forward a half, that's just, it gives you the same shape as just going forward one. Yeah. Interesting. So let's have a little look at, I keep saying a little hear what that sounds like. So I need to go and paste the code. So this one is called Wave with Pulse. I couldn't really think of a better name. Whereabouts am I pasting it here? So Wave with Pulse coming up. Loud noise. So that's kind of a bit like the previous one, but a bit more oomph, bit more, yeah, distortion, more harmonics, however you want to phrase it, a bit more gritty. So that is the sine pulse. So the next one, maybe let's play a little game. See if you can figure out where I'm going to move the sliders based on what this one's called. So this one is called half slow hold at end. So 0.56, 0.5, 0.6 cross, 1. Yeah, there we go. So we get this, yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to remember what this is called. What Casio call this. So they call it the sine pulse. I think that's right. Anyway, you get this kind of shape. In fact, let's go to Wikipedia for a second, just so you can see the front panel of one of these things. Yeah, here we are. So it's this one, number 5, that we're looking at the moment. So, should we play it? I think yes, since you can't answer for yourself. So, yeah, no. Sine pulse was the previous one. Yeah, we already discussed that. Yeah, it looked like a pulse and then a sine. This one, yeah, half slow hold at end. What does Casio call that? Half slow hold at end. Saw pulse. Yes, that makes more sense. Sorry, I confused myself. So we've got the saw, and then so there's a slightly different meaning of the word pulse. So in the previous one, pulse was like a pulsating thing, like a sharp spike. This time it says in the sense of like a pulse wave. So a family of waves, like square waves. So it's flat pulse shape. Saw part, pulse part. Right. Anyway, let's get on to what it sounds like. So this is saw pulse, or otherwise known as half slow hold at end in my somewhat more long-winded labels. I called them that because, yeah, anyway. So, kind of like the sawtooth one, just a bit gentler. Yeah, I gave them the names that I did because, here we're feeding in the cosine function each time, but you could feed in a different source waveform as well. So then it wouldn't be the names with signing might not be appropriate anymore. So another trick that the Casio has available is, I was about to refresh the page, but that's not what we want to do. We want to add some more points. So 0.61. Hang on, I missed something on the list of points in my document that I'm copying from. I think I have. So 1, 1, 1. Yeah, that still needs to be a point. So 1.04. We want to be at 1.5. It hasn't done anything yet, but it will. And then at 2. Ooh, that's an interesting one. Let's come up with the right way. That's not what we're going for, though. But similar. Oh, in fact, it is the same. Is it the same? Yeah. Anyway, doesn't matter how you create it. So now we've got these. So we've got the saw poles, the sawtooth bit and the flat bit, and then I've followed that with our first one, our what I call half fast, or just the sawtooth one, basically. So in that small section, the 0.04 between 1 and 1.04, we're running half the wave again, and then we're stretching out that second half. So you get this kind of, it's not quite a pure cycle of cosine, it's a bit lopsided, and then you've got a bit of square wave thrown in as well. So we've combined two of the previous patterns. We had the saw pulse, so we're doing saw pulse followed by saw. So that is something that the Casio CZ can do. So that that adds a load of extra combinations. So let's have a listen. So phase distortion dot chain two of them together, and half slow hold at end, otherwise known as saw pulse, followed by half fast. Okay, noise coming up. Yeah, so that one has quite an interesting sound. It's actually got a subharmonic in it. Yeah, so it's got a whole bunch of. I played middle C, but for simplicity, let's say that I played it A4, the A note above middle C. So then the fundamental would normally be 440, and then you would have your harmonics like 880, 1260, and the various multiples. Whereas with that one, it would also generate a tone at 220 and 660, and so on and so forth. Because basically, in order to hear the whole shape, you've got to listen to 2 units of time. So that's interesting. And then maybe let's just shall I throw the bonus one in? Why not? Okay, let's refresh the page, and then let's do So at the 0.5 position, I want to have done 0.62 of a wave, I could decide. And then at 1, I want to go back to having done nothing. I want to be back to our starting place. So it's going to run the oscillator forwards, and then it's going to reverse direction into like negative frequency and run backwards so it gets back to its starting position. And now this straight line has gone a bit. See, it doesn't matter. This is just saying that like here it's completed 0 cycles and then instantaneously it's completed 1 cycle, but the end of one cycle is the same as the end of another, so it doesn't really make a difference. But if we wanted to just get pedantic, that it's an accurate representation of what my code is actually doing, then this should be 0, and yeah, I shouldn't have changed that one. It should still be 1, and this one should be 0, and lastly this one should be... no, I keep changing the top one, the X position. We don't want to change that. I'm just the model has 5 points, but if you don't use all 5 points, then you just have to set them the same. There we go. So that's what our phase transfer function is actually doing. Anyway, yeah, so you get this kind of like mirror effect, like it runs part of the wave and then it goes backwards. So it's like drawing a mirror down here, which is pretty cool. Let's have a listen, and then we'll move on to some other stuff. So this one is called Mirror, funny enough. Loud noise. Okay, not the most amazing, but it was okay. There's another recipe for the recipe book. So now let's finally talk about the relationship between phase distortion and frequency modulation. So here in another GeoGebra workbook, whatever they call it, I don't know. I have so here's our half fast. That's the one that looks like a sawtooth. I haven't quite bent it as far as we had before for reasons that we shall get onto in a moment. But it's that recipe. So with a blue line, we've got so it's the same as before. So the blue line is our wave output shape, and then the green line is our phase transfer function, telling us how far through the wave's normal shape we need to be at. Like, how do we bend it, basically. And I mentioned before that it's quite intuitive because you can look at the slopes of these lines. So steep slope, more gentle slope. Yeah, so hence the name half fast. So there's a fast bit and a slow bit. So in terms of what's called phase modulation, which most synths that call themselves FM actually use phase modulation, unless they're like, yeah, with certain exceptions. But that's what Yamaha used in their implementation. They produce very similar. Sounds like there's an equivalent setup for anything you can do in FM, you can do in PM and vice versa. It's just a matter of working the math. but in some analog synths and modular, then they have FM tends to actually be FM, but the difference is quite minor. In fact, the difference is what we're about to come on to now. So phase modulation, which is your typical FM synth, just to be confusing. So the phase transfer function is what the phase is what the phase is with respect to time. But if we just have our regular kind of oscillator that is constantly moving forwards in time, then as we saw before, the undistorted wave is just the line y equals x. So if you want to, phase modulation is basically it's modifying that kind of default setup that the oscillator moves forward at a constant rate. So in terms of the equations, here we are. We have phase modulation is the transfer function, transfer x minus x. So it's basically compensating for that always moving forward thing. Because the green line's telling us the exact position, but then if you take away where it happens to be anyway, because it's always pushing forward, then that tells you how you need to. This is the shape of our modulator waveform. If we were to do a phase modulation equivalent of what this phase distortion synthesis is doing. So you can see that you could replicate this shape in using phase modulation, i.e. FM synthesis, just to be confusing. So on an FM synth, you theoretically could replicate it, but it depends if your synth, supports a modulator waveform that is this kind of lopsided triangle shape, which in practice, that's not a common shape to work with. So they are theoretically equivalent, but whether a particular FM synth can do everything a phase distortion one can do, and vice versa, is another issue. And then, of course, FM synths do have some extra tricks like feedback and algorithms with more than two oscillators and things, which don't so much have equivalents in phase distortion synthesis, as far as I know. So then if we were to look at frequency modulation, or quotes true FM, as some synths call it, which is just, in terms of the language of electronics, radio, broadcast, those kind of things, that is what FM is. So if this is how we kind of, so the green line's what the phase is in absolute times, the red one is how we kind of nudge the phase backwards and forwards from where it would naturally be. And then, phase is like our distance, like how far through the waveform we are, and frequency is like the speed of how fast we're progressing. So if you know any kind of basic calculus, or even if you don't, basically, the frequency is just going to be whatever the gradient of this red line is. So or to put it another way, speed equals distance divided by time. Then you get this purple line, which it doesn't connect them together. There should be, right? Well, not should be, but it would be clearer if there was a vertical line up here, but it doesn't draw it in GeoGebra. But basically what we've got is we've got a pulse wave. So it's not quite a square wave because we've got spends longer down here in the negative part than up here in the positive part. But so that is what our modulator would look like using frequency modulation as opposed to phase modulation, or true FM, actual FM, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, if you've got if you're doing it in analog, or you've got a modular synth module that can do FM, then it probably might do more likely to do FM rather than phase modulation. It comes under various terms like linear through zero frequency modulation. Anyway, so that's the relationship between all three things: phase distortion synthesis, phase modulation, and frequency modulation. So I thought that was a neat little diagram just to explain that. And yeah, we can play with this one right before. That's probably a good place to end it. Wheel, playing around with the graphs, playing around with audio. So hopefully that's an interesting introduction to phase distortion synthesis, and there are other tutorials you'll find that sometimes contain slight variations on what I've said. I mean, yeah, as we found earlier, we found like two phase transfer functions that produce the same overall shape. So there's slightly different ways of doing it, and which one Casio does, like, who knows? But I think I may have got closer to the truth. And and there's one article that says some stuff that's like, seems to have dragged in stuff that's not phase distortion synthesis at all. It's just to do with reading waveforms. Yeah. Anyway. Oh well, maybe I can find that article. I'm going to pause for a second. Let's find that article. Okay, so just briefly, here's the website that's misleading. It's not the only one that kind of quotes the same material, but they explain phase distortion just as I have, and then they produce this diagram. So it's an extract or a quote from a book by someone called Russ, but yeah, the people quoting it seem to either not understand it or quoting it out of context or something. So they're like, oh yeah, you can just like say, yeah, use a different phase distortion function for like each quarter. So they're suggesting that there's a way of using phase distortion to bend this sine wave into this shape. But if you look at it, like, so the first quarter is just your normal sine wave shape. But then the second quarter, like, the only way to get the wave to bend in like an upward curve like that, the only part of the wave that does that is the first quarter of the sine wave. But then if you set your phase to be, use your phase transfer function to move your phase kind of pointer, to be in that first quarter again, then it's just going to replay that first quarter. There's no way to have that curve and have it shifted down in that position using phase distortion. So this shape that Yamaha synthesizers produce is not generated by phase distortion. It's just that they've got an internal table that's basically a sample of a sine wave that they use to generate all the sine wave sounds for all the carriers and modulators, and it's just it's doing a transformation on that, like it's playing the values of those samples from the first quarter again in order to get the second quarter, but then it's doing like a subtraction to like move them down here, which is a different kind of transformation. That's not phase distortion. And then they even go on down here and yeah, they kind of seem to imply that um, uh, well, they're not exactly clear either way, but um, what they're talking about down here is not phase distortion at all. This is wave shaping synthesis. So we've been bending the wave by um, doing things with phase. Wave shaping is different. It's to do with like um, kind of squeezing or stretching it in the other direction, the vertical direction, like up and down. So that could warrant a whole video in itself. And in fact, you can, anything that you can generate, any shape you can generate through wave shaping, you can generate through phase distortion in a bit of a roundabout way, which is could be interesting to talk about. So it'd be an extra equivalence. This thing of how they're related, you could have wave shaping, but it would look a very weird shape. I don't know why I've gone to that one. We're done. Thank you for listening for so long. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Cheers. Catch you later.